thank you for taking a few minutes on your Monday night to learn a little bit more about fueling generosity. And we will start. You're going to see a PowerPoint here in a minute, but I wanted to find a way that many of you could get to know us a little bit better. And in COVID time, we're trying to find creative ways to do that. So in the line of letting go and fueling generosity, I wanted to ask Jeff, because tonight we're going to be talking about some of the ministries that we have in our ministry areas and in our churches. And so I wanted to ask Jeff, what is the most rewarding ministry that you have added in the years that you have been as the treasurer, Jeff? So Jeff Pospisil is the treasurer, for those of you who don't know, the treasurer of the Dakotas United Methodist Foundation. Conference, yeah. Dakotas United Methodist Conference. And he wants to tell a little bit about what gets him going in the morning. Why do you come to work in the morning, Jeff?
Well, welcome everybody too. By the way, with COVID, I'm really on dress casual right now, the hoodie and the t-shirt. One of the things that I did, and I was thinking about doing this for years, I liked going out to the churches, and I always liked spending time with the churches, which is something different than most conference treasurers did a lot. But the one thing that I did recently was I fired up a YouTube channel, and I started putting out these weekly videos. And basically I took just pastors and lay people's questions on church finances for the most part and just turned them into videos. And for me, that's been enjoyable. And to think that I started it about a year ago and right before and in perfect time for a pandemic, so I didn't have to recreate anything for. So how about you, Sheri? What's been the most rewarding thing you've added in recent years?
Well, first, Jeff, tell us how many years you've been with the conference. How many
since
years
2008.
2008, it's a big year for Jeff, for those of you who don't know.
Been, what has that been, 12 and a half years now.
Yeah. So he's been with the conference and helping with the foundation about twice as long as I've been with the foundation, because I started in 2014. And probably one of the things that is most rewarding to me as well is working with the churches and helping them discover the resources that they have within the churches and how they can find ways to help people see the rewards that it is for generosity. I love to be able to sit with a donor or even at a church finance meeting and see the light bulbs come on when they see the possibility for ministry. So those are some of the areas that are most rewarding for Jeff and I, and we'll talk a little bit more about those and how we got there at the end of the meeting. So again, thank you everybody for attending. I'm going to let me see, do I have to share my screen here? Sorry, everybody. Or yep. Kelsey, are you going to share? Sorry. Everyone, didn't quite have this worked out like we should have. Here we go.
Victory.
Did I get it?
Yep, you're doing well.
I can't see it on my screen though. All right. Does everybody see this?
Yes.
All right, so the Dakotas and Minnesota Methodist Foundations, we work with developing relationships, cultivating resources, and embracing ministry. And tonight the webinar is Letting Go, Fueling Generosity. And as we mentioned before, I'm Sheri Meister, and I'm the President, CEO, or Executive Director for the foundations, both in Minnesota and the Dakotas. And with us is Jeff Pospisil, who is the conference and foundation treasurer. Almost treasurers, isn't it, Jeff? With his
treasurers, I own 3 treasurers title. So
treasurers.
Yeah. So
as we talked about this, we were thinking about what what is happening in your churches or your ministries of areas that would work a little bit smoother if you would be able to let go of something in your church. And we found that just letting go of the things that are in your way or annoying you isn't the best steps and the best first step. So we wanted to help you find the first steps and how to work through this. So the first steps are define who you are as a church. We'll go through each one of these again in a minute. Develop relationships and tell your story. So defining who you are. Take the time to explore the possibilities of who your church could be or who the ministry is within your church and how you are reaching the people and how are you connecting that ministry or your church with the people of your community. What is the one thing your church does really well? What is it that you are proud of? Is there something in your church that stands out, maybe different than some of the other churches in your community, or different than churches that you've been involved with in the past? And what are the people most proud of in your church? This way, it's as you define who you are and you find those areas that you do very well that you're proud of. What is standing in your way? These are all things just to start thinking about. What is standing in your way? What are the roadblocks? What are the challenges? What just plain needs to go? And Jeff, aren't there sometimes financial things that just need to go?
Yeah, I always think that's one of the stumbling blocks. One of the things that comes to mind always, I grew up in the 90s, and nobody really cared what Michael Jordan made when he was a part of the Bulls. But if he would have been on a losing team, everybody would have cared. And I think kind of what we're getting at is a lot of times we dwell on the losses as a church. We don't think about the victories. That's what I heard when you were going through those first couple slides, is that we don't dwell on what we do well. And then I think finance is becoming even bigger stumbling block then. So.
Right. And then what steps, when you recognize those and you want to celebrate what we're doing well and what you're doing well as a church, what steps are you taking to move in that right direction? So what possibilities are there that you have that you can move the things you're doing well forward? So one of the things that resonates with me is when we let go of what was, we begin to see the possibilities of what could be. And I have some fall pictures in here because fall is such a good time to think about that. The trees are letting go of the leaves. One of the things that I notice when we do that, you can see the whole area a little bit differently. After you see the beauty and the color of their leaves, they let go of those leaves to shine through another picture of beauty around their surroundings. And so many times we don't let go and we don't want to see the opportunities. It's because we're comfortable. We're in our comfort zone. We like it there. We feel good there. Everything seems to be moving along just fine. And we're afraid to move into that opportunity zone. We're afraid of the possibilities because we might not know them as well as we do of all of the things in our comfort zone. But if we can get into that opportunity zone, think of the possibilities. I didn't get my slide quite working on this. But if we don't think, take a minute to think outside the box. What is out there? What could ministry look like if we didn't stay in that comfort zone? So if you were gifted $100,000, there's going to be a little bit of work to do tonight. So grab a pen and pencil just so that you can write and think about a couple things so you have that for the future of when you're looking at ways to change things in your church. If you were gifted $100,000, what is the first thing you would add to your ministry? So just think about that. We're not going to have questions. You can if you have questions or if you want to make comments, you can do it in the chat. We've got Kelsey and I think Jeff's watching the chat as well. I don't have that capability right now, but if you have questions or if you'd like to add something, please put that in the chat box. But sometimes everybody's plate. Oh, go ahead, Jeff.
I was just thinking, I ran into a church the other day that got about $100,000 bequest. And like a typical Dakotan, I don't know if Minnesota's like this, but like a typical Dakotan, they were thinking, well, we'll save 95% of it and maybe we'll spend 5% of it on something because it might be a rainy day someday. And I'm just thinking, you're in the middle of a pandemic and whatever else.
We're in the
middle
of a rainy day.
Yeah.
Right.
If this isn't rain, what is rain? But anyway, but that's how the Dakotans often think, at least in my experience. And I'm a Montanan, so that's how Montanans think too. If I got 100,000, I might save 95,000 and maybe splurge with the other 5,000 by replacing some carpet.
Right. That needed to be replaced quite a while ago, I'm guessing.
Yeah, but yeah.
And to that point, sometimes those gifts are overwhelming because of all of the things you're doing and all of the things you're trying to do in your churches. But it's a good idea to let something go before you start something new and before you spend part of that 100,000 and then truly use that 100,000 or that gift to expand your ministry and reach outside your doors to meet new people and bring them into the church and to meet Jesus. As we talk about that, the need to let go, resistance will begin. And that's not a secret. The giving up, there is something that's important to somebody, and it made an impact somewhere along in their lives. But as the world changes, as life changes, things are going to have to let something go, and that resistance will be there. And then the excuses not to move forward will begin to rise because it's easier to not move forward than it is to move forward. It's easier to stay comfortable. It's easier to stay to continue to do what you're doing. But I know Jeff has many examples, or he sees it many times, as we both do, on people trying to hang on to things. And those programs are dying, and they find reasons to keep them.
Tom asks a good question on the subject of saving for a rainy day. What's the best? What would be a good target amount? And I'm a believer in a rainy day fund, Tom. So besides the comments I made before, but a rainy day fund provides you opportunity, for if it rains or if you see a good opportunity to take. For me, I'm still of that 3 to 6 months. I'm kind of a Dave Ramsey fan. But I think if you aim for about that 3 to 6 months of your operating budget, so if you get your operating budget 25 to 50%, normally that would be pretty good, I think. I see churches that are nervous even though they have 200% of their operating budget in savings in the rainy day fund. So that's where I think people are going a little bit over. They're not even looking for opportunities there.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And then the doubters will become more vocal and less supportive. They don't always bring facts to the table, do they, Jeff? The doubters. They don't always bring not just facts, but sometimes things are made up into how they believe that their church wants things to be, and it becomes a one person or a very vocal person that makes some of those decisions in your leadership.
I remember.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I just remember being in a couple of meetings where we weren't even talking about real people, but we were worried about what other imaginary people would think about our decision, how they might object or think about it. And it wasn't even real people that we were talking about. So it was, what do you think the community will think of this? Well, chances are they weren't thinking about our church at all. So, but anyway, we get wrapped up about the weirdest things. There's always a lot of excuses to not change. And honestly, people are upset. They'll voice their opinion if things do change, but they'll also voice their opinion if they don't change. And a lot of times they just slowly leave, and they stop attending, or they take their giving with them as well. So
Right. And I think sometimes we we make the decisions based on the fear that it isn't as much of what we could be as it is giving up what was. So the fear of giving some of that up. And so we also, many times we program to we try to grease the squeakiest wheel. Or do we even need that wheel anymore? That's the piece that I think we have to think about and understand. Because we've let out of our doors of our churches because we haven't been able to change and we haven't been able to let go of things that aren't working. We've lost good people for those reasons. This is what we base a lot of our decisions on and the hopes that our churches will be, and it's nostalgia, which is the art of making the past seem better than it was. This is the Beersford United Methodist Church, and this is where I was baptized, confirmed, and married to the church on the left. And I can't remember how many years that the new church has been in place, but when I think of going home, which I do often to visit this church in Beersford, I still have the image of the old church and playing in the backyard of the church. We always played during vacation Bible school, and then we could walk from church to grandma's for noon, lunch or dinner at that time, and then after that we got to go swimming. So it was a big day that week, but I would be in the backyard and we'd play Red Rover, send someone over. And those memories come back when we're going to do something at the church, even though we're driving to the new church on the right. So it's sometimes we try to make church what we remember it in the past.
And the thing is, that old church, I'm betting that if you had to go to that old church in the middle of summer when it's 100 degrees, it doesn't look like it had AC.
Well, you can ask my family about that because we were married there 32 years ago on July 18th, probably one of the warmest July 18th they've ever had. And it was quite toasty in the tuxedos that the guys were wearing. I do remember that day.
You know, the older I get, I got another birthday coming up here pretty soon. The older I get, I think the more I look at the old days, I think I was better back then, maybe. I could do more back then. Maybe the circumstances weren't better, but I was better. So, anyway.
We've grown, but our nostalgia stays where we want that memory to be.
Yeah.
The other thing is that when you're making these decisions and you're wanting to move forward and you're wanting to expand on the ministries that you're doing to your church, it's like when Moses was taking the Israelites through the Red Sea, when he parted the Red Sea, they got partway there and they wanted to go back to Egypt. They wanted to go to what was familiar. And this slide's a little bit blurry on my screen, probably yours as well. But you can see they couldn't see what was in front of them, and they questioned their faith of moving forward.
Sheri, just
go ahead.
Quick question. There's another Sheri that also asks, there is value to the old things and restoring some things, but what is the balance? And she brings up her grandma's 110-year-old wedding ring she resized and is wearing it with honor. How does that fit in?
I think that's a really good point.
Because you go to it. You attend a historic church, Sioux Falls First, which is a blend of the restored and the antique, or whatever you want to call it.
Right, and that's a really good point, Sheri, for bringing that forward. You don't want to give up who you are, but you want to make the changes from who you are to adapt to where we are in society society today, or where we are in the church world today. And just as you did, you resized your ring. So we have to look at the programs that we're doing, the ministries that we're doing, and keep that, the value of who you are, but resize it for the people who are needing and wanting the ministry of today. And to get to that point, you're taking with who you are, and you're going through, passing through the Red Sea, and you find Mount Sinai. And that's where everything changed for the Israelites. And Mount Sinai was their turning point. So you have to think about, what is your turning point? What is it that is going to make you keep that, that, not all the history, but of that piece of who you are, and turn it and bring it into something that's really good in your community. So where is your turning point? What would it be in your church world to know that you could be who you are, celebrate who you are, and adapt it to where you need to be? And where is that time that we can let go of some of those pieces? And I love that analogy of resizing it and reshaping it so you can continue to be who you are and to move forward. Ask yourself this every day. What decisions have you made today that will move your church or ministry forward? One of the things that happened in the foundation today, and then we've been working on it, but we really made it come to fruition today, was that we combined some of our granting opportunities so that we could pool the money and bring in more opportunities, and then we were able to fund another piece of that for technology dollars. But with that pooled dollars, we're going to be able to reach more people, give more churches opportunities, and to have more resources available for those across the Dakotas. It didn't take, we didn't do it overnight. It takes some time, but now we've streamlined it so that the applications are better and the focus of the dollars are better. So that is one of the decisions we made today, that we're moving the foundation and the conference together as we partner. We're moving it forward. And then once you have decided or gone through a plan of who you are and who your church is, then you go into building. Oh, this is I added
before. Do we have a polling question?
Oh, we did. I did forget about that.
Right. I think so. Here's the main point of it. Sheri brings up a lot of good questions, that every leadership team should basically think through. But it's really driving at this. Do the people in your church believe the best days of the church are in front of them or behind them? Do they believe they're going to the promised land, or do they want to go back to Egypt? That's the kind of question we're wondering about. And that has such a big influence on giving. That question, do the people believe the best days of your church are in front of them or behind them?
Right, that's exactly. So, Kelsey, do you have that?
Yep, and it's up there, and we'll take polling results, and then we'll share it with you as soon as people.
I only have this on my screen. Jeff, I got to figure out a better way to do this so I can kind of see what's going on too. I maybe should have opened another version on my iPad, but anyway, so thanks for keeping me in the loop on that. But developing relationships, to be able to do this and to move your church and your ministries forward and to let go of some of those things that are holding you back, developing relationships is so important, and spending time with those who expand your thinking and helping them to understand the important measures that you're taking to be able to change your church and to do some of the expansion on your programs in your ministry. So these are some questions in your mind as you're developing those relationships. Who are the decision makers in your church? Who are the ones that that they can sort of make things happen? Who are they, and have you reached out to them? Who are the change agents? And these people can be kind of scary. They've got ideas. I think it's important and a reminder that not all ideas are going to work, but that it gives you a starting point, and that what the initial idea is might not always be the outcome, but it gives you a starting point. So listen to the change agents. What do they see? And then who are the gentle, silent giants? Many of the gentle, silent giants can move a mountain way more than the vocal people that are either cheerleading this or standing in your way. But who are the gentle, silent giants that have a lot of wisdom?
I got a quick note first on that same kind of thing. So first of all, the results are 58% think the people in their church think their best days are behind them, which is not surprising, especially in 2020. And there was a comment about probably it's mixed. Some people think they're in front of you, and some people think they're behind you. So, but I had one church treasurer, he was a pastor, that one of the gentle, silent giants, he had no idea what people were giving, the pastor did, until they got a new computer system. And because he was the young guy, he had to set it up. And then he found out what people were giving. And he said, the guy that gave the most was the guy that sat in the back pew and left early. And he was like that. And it made a difference on how he did nominations, is what he ended up saying, because he had no idea that the people that were made it look like they were giving the most actually weren't giving barely anything. They were just talkers. So.
Well, I think that's what's really important, Jeff, is that they hide behind it, and sometimes they think that the noise that they create gives them, I don't know what word am I trying to say, that gives them more power than what their actions really are.
Well, it gives them clout. I mean, I remember, again, as a church financial secretary myself, I would think if you're a lawyer or a doctor, of course you were the biggest givers, but that's not always the case. Sometimes it's in one church I served, it was the old retired banker, and then the next one was this young couple that just happened to believe in tithing. So they were number two besides the retired banker.
Right.
Anyway.
And then who are your worker bees? Sometimes we forget about the worker bees, and they're the ones that are at the church making things run behind the scenes, and we want to keep them in the loop, and we want to visit with them too. And we have seen time and time again that they are the worker bees that maybe aren't giving great amounts on the weekly offering, but they, in the long run, have put the church in the will, and then they're in their estate plan. You are in their estate plan. And then who are the most dedicated, and who follow through, and who will be there for you to help you champion your efforts. So that developing relationships, all of you take just a few seconds here to identify 5 to 10. I've got 10 here, but identify 10 people in your program area or your ministry or your church that you should be contacting, that you should be having visits with, that you should be reaching out to. Who are the 10 people in your church? We'll take just a couple seconds.
Because these are the people that will help you get that vision for the future, right? That's what I understand, right? So.
Right. Yep, you want those 10 people, those silent giants or those gentle giants, the decision makers, the worker bees, the change agents, who would they be in your church, the leaders of your church? They're not always the ones that are the loudest or the ones that are selective in what they do, but who are the true leaders of your church? Then once you identify them, here's 3 ways to connect with them. Simple ways. Make a phone call, write a note, or take them to coffee or lunch. And when you're doing these things, remember, this is about how they're doing. This is not an intent to ask them to open their checkbook the first time or the second time that you meet with them. You're trying to get to know these individuals. And so you can do that, now today by Zoom as well. That's becoming so much more popular and more common. And back in the day, it was, there's nothing better I love to do than go to lunch or to coffee and talk with someone and visit with them and learn about them and ask the questions and find out who they were as a person. So I hope we can get back to that someday soon. But the same outcome can be with a phone call, a Zoom call, or writing them a note. Jeff is excellent in the writing a note area. He writes a certain amount of notes to people who are in ministry and that he has seen make an impact. And Jeff, you want to just talk a little bit about that, about what you've seen in that area?
And it's interesting because I do it sporadically. So I wish I was very consistent, but I'm not 100% consistent on it. But I write notes usually to pastors, sometimes to lay people. Normally I'll hear something, I'll just want to share it, or if there's a concern, and it's surprising. I want to say about 75% of them, they just receive them, and that's fine. I wrote it for them, but there's that other 25% where they'll get the note, and then you'll hear back from them, and they'll just say something like, I didn't know anybody knew what I was going through, and I'm just thankful that for your encouragement. Or I had a really tough week, and then I got your note. And even recently, I got one from a person who is just retiring that says, I was cleaning out my desk, and of all the things that I had there, I had your note because it was such an encouragement. And it was just it's an interesting thing where people don't write many notes anymore. Right. So
yeah, that is just one of the best ways, is the art of the connection, and to be able to do that. And it touches people in ways that we'll never understand, or it's bigger than what we'll ever understand.
Karen asked who should be writing those notes, and that's a good question. I honestly don't know. I'm the conference treasurer, but I would say the pastor or the head of the foundation or whatever that group is, they should be taking some of the lead, as well as maybe people on your leadership board. That would be a nice thing. I always think it's such a good thing I have one pastor that has his financial secretary pull out certain giving statements that caught her eye. And then the pastor will go ahead and add a little note of thank you to it. Like if they're a first-time giver, or maybe they signed up for electronic giving or something like that. So I think it's extra meaningful if the pastor does it, or if it is somebody on the leadership team. I think I'd find it. I know one church, their leadership team does it. They kind of split it up that way. So, and I do. It looks like Lenny asks, email or handwritten note. I am saying handwritten note. If you send me an email, I will actually take negative points to you. You get positive points for a handwritten note, negative points if I get an email, usually. So only halfway joking.
And that could, right, because Lenny, you kind of have to know your person. We would never write Jeff an email and tell him thank you, or that we were thinking of him, because 1, he doesn't always read his email, but 2, email is work to Jeff. But I received, I sit on the National Lily Committee, and I received a note from one of the national leaders in the Lily Committee one time by email, and it just made my day. And so you have to kind of know your audience there. Jeff's right. Personal notes are there first, always, but it isn't a bad idea to do an email one as well, depending on your audience. Karen, to your point,
Oh,
Huh?
go ahead. Go ahead.
And Karen, to your point on if it should be you or if it should be other people in your church, I would say your top 10 that you come up with should be you. It's a really good idea, as Jeff said, to have others write people in the church to say that the church is thinking of them, praying for them, and keeping them, held in prayer or in conversation. And so uh, it just depends on how you've got the system. I've got a really quick story on this too. When I ran for Sioux Falls School Board and won the bid for school board, I received a card, and I have it somewhere. It should be right on my desk, but I received a handwritten note that had a personal note in it referencing something, I can't remember exactly what it was, of an issue that was going on by Senator Tom Daschle. He was the majority leader at that time, and he had time to write me a note for running for school board. And I was absolutely blown away, and it was a handwritten note. And I was so excited, and our daughter was in elementary school at that time. I said, Katie, look at this. I got a note from Senator Daschle. And she said, Mom, he probably has a stamp for that. Talk about humbling a person at that point. Later, I talked to his campaign manager that worked with him and his number one go-to guy for a while. And I said, how did Tom do all of those? And he had a staff person have them all lined up, all stamped and everything to go. And then when they were traveling and he was on his plane or wherever he needed to be or in downtime, he would write that pile of notes for that day. So in that sense, it's however you prepare them. It's not that you had to do all of it, Karen, from step to step to step, but how do you put those systems in place to make that difference?
So the next question is, aren't giving records supposed to be confidential? And they are supposed to be held sensitive. They should be held confidential, but the pastor and certain people in leadership so the financial secretary for sure has access, but then also the pastor is named in the book of discipline as well as being one that's able to see him, and for good reason. I mean, and I always qualify it. If you suspect your pastor is, I don't know, swayed by that kind of thing, like then that might be a different conversation. But most of our pastors, and there's pastors on this call, they don't want to see the records. And for them, it's just like one of those things, well, I know I should know who my biggest givers are, or I know I should know who made a step up in their giving. It's one of those things they know they should know, but they really don't want to know, is how most of them approach it. And that's really the right attitude. If you do run against that pastor once in a blue moon that abuses or is maybe gossips about that, then yeah, I wouldn't let them see the records either. So
no, but the rule of thumb is that if you think of it as a nonprofit, the executive would always know who the givers are of their organization so that they can keep that line of communication open, so that they are also people that are brought into leadership. Some of our bigger givers are quieter sometimes, and they're not always brought into leadership, and it's important to have those people with those resources at a leadership as well. Not that they should use their money to change what's going on or to sorry everybody if you heard that.
Yeah, but that is the concern. I mean, that people that write the biggest checks. But I mean, for me, I remember the best time when I was serving at Bismarck First United Methodist Church. When things seemed to be happening the best, I happened to know that everybody in that room was either a tither or working towards it, and there was a different energy, and they were serving too in a variety of areas, and it was a fantastic group to be a part of when you knew everybody was bought in. So
right. Yeah, so the short answer to that, there's things that weigh into it, but the short answer is yes. Leadership, pastors should always know the giving records. So to be able to have those good conversations, it's really, really hard sometimes to not want to tell all the great things that are going on in your organization, but the best thing to do is to listen to the people that you are having the conversation with. And that will help them. If you are hearing their story, it will help them connect to the story of the church, and it will help you connect them to the stories in the love of the things that you have going on in their church. And then you can hear from those conversations what the heart of those, or what's going on in the heart of those you are visiting with. And so someone might have a real love for the community ministry or the lunch ministry or the children's ministry or whatever you have going on. So many people think that when I'm out fundraising or working for one of the programs in the conferences, that it's really easy to always go back to the same people for camping or for leadership development or things, and they get behind that. The understanding is that someone else might be very interested in camping and never had been asked about it, how it made an impact in their life, or how they might be interested in supporting it now. So you have to listen to that person and not make any assumptions that they always want to support one area of your church. And then through that, you'll figure out and see, because the light bulb comes on. Those are always my favorite meetings, is when I can visit with somebody and I see a light bulb come on, because you can see what brings them joy. So with that, what is your story? As you've defined it, think about and take just 2 seconds to write down, what is your church story? And then tell your story. Connect your story with the heart of your members. Invite others to share their testimony. This is probably one of the most impactful things that we see on a regular basis. Wouldn't you agree, Jeff?
You know, going back to my time at First United Methodist Church, we were going to go undergo a building project, and it's kind of a stagnant church in membership or attendance. You know, I didn't know how that was going to work, but then I want to say when Kermit Culver, who was our pastor at the time, helped flesh out the story and tell the testimonies, that's really what made the difference. When we saw that we were part of launching the first hospital in Bismarck, you know, and we were part of launching the Christian school, and then, you know, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, we've been leaving a legacy of surprising ministry for years and years, and we eventually changed our name to Legacy United Methodist Church out of that. But it was basically out of telling those stories that made us think, oh, you know, our best days are not behind us. They're in front of us. Look at what we've done in the past. We can do even greater in the future. But those stories really helped.
And then show how your ministry is changing lives and making a difference. What are the impact stories? What are you seeing? How people are impacted, and how our people are in a better place because of the ministries that you have within your church? And how are you making a difference in the lives of others? And then those are another story to be able to tell. Those are the great stories that we get to tell when we're visiting with donors and helping churches find ways to visit with their donors. And then it's putting it all together. If you define who you are, develop relationships, and share your story, and then let go of what's holding you back and enjoy the blessings of your flourishing ministries. That's how it'll all come together. And with that, we have another poll before we finish up here. We have another poll that we're interested in. We'd be glad to have a 4-week study on how to build relationships, how to put it together, how to define who you are, and do a little more intense work. So if you'd be interested in that, something that we're throwing out there for 2021, if there is interest in this. So Kelsey, you want to put up the other poll for us? So Jeff, I'm going to try to get out of this and stop sharing. I don't know if I know how to do that. And get back to it. Can somebody else take me out of this, or do I have to do it?
Good luck. There, you did it.
Did I? Okay.
Yep.
All right, now my Zoom is gone, so I'm still. There we go. So Jeff, what did you have to let go of to be able to do the ministry and the connecting with the churches that you do so very well?
I want to say I'm still letting go of stuff, but it's been a process because all of a sudden I really liked doing all the finance and accounting work. I mean, that was one of the things I took a lot of pride in is doing that. And now I know I'm rushed in that. I mean, my reports are not going to be stellarly improved every time. That's just the way it's going to be. I've given up email.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, how's
I
that working
haven't
for
totally, but there is that time constraint because it definitely does take more time. And so I'm basically working on a shorter week. So that is the time pressure. Is I know I'm never going to be the best report giver anymore, or in terms of accounting. So I had to give that up. So they're good reports, but they're not great.
Well, they're not as pretty as they used to be. They're still, you just have them all as, accountants probably don't like that word pretty, but they're not as laid out, but you still do the reporting. It's just not laid out in the same fashion that you did before.
Yeah. So what about you?
I think the same thing is that when I started in the Dakotas, we didn't have any communication vehicles and that type of thing. And I have a passion for designing and working with desktop publishing and Adobe and those things. And to put that message out and put that creative touch on it, I had to let that go to be able to do more of the connection with the churches. And now we have Kelsey. Kelsey, you want to jump on so people have an idea of who you are and they can see you as well? We have Kelsey behind the scenes doing many of those things, and we're very appreciative of the work that she does. And she does a great job at it. And so I had to let go of that control piece that I wanted to do that and put my touches on it. And that's not what it's about. It's how do we get that message out in a very nice piece that Kelsey does. So there are things you have to let go. So did we have any response on the poll?
Everybody said no. Just kidding.
Okay. Well, that makes 2020 a whole lot easier for me then.
70% said they would like it. Yeah. And Lena says her church for sure. So.
All right. Well, we will be putting some of that information out and do like a 4-week series on developing these and are developing relationships and creating more generosity. Every time I say series, my Siri comes up on my computer. So if you hear that noise, that's what that is. I gotta figure out how to turn that off next time because I don't really need Siri's help on any of this. So that's all I have. Jeff, do you have anything else for this evening? I want to thank everybody that has signed on tonight and participated. We will send out the recording so that those who were not able to attend can pick up a few pointers. And we are here to help all of you. And anyone that has any questions, please do not hesitate to call our office, contact us.
Yeah. If I had any last word, it would be just a reminder that your best days are in front of you, and you got to start believing that and helping people believe that, because that's probably the difference between who would give to something that's dying or that they think is the worst days are ahead of them. So, and I believe that for a lot of our churches, Sheri and I visit a lot of churches, and a lot of times we see the potential and before they see them. And just trying to convince them. And we're not Pollyanna or anything else, but we believe that they got a solid ministry and they can expand on it.
Exactly. Well, thanks everybody. It was great to have you join us, and we will have another webinar, and we'll have to get the topic and the date out to you because we didn't do our homework ahead of time. But it'll be after the first of the year in
There's
2020.
Question from
2021.
Sheri about if there's resources online on the website and other places, and we'll put some links in there. We do have links to past webinars which dealt with similar subjects. I remember the Art of the Ask and some other ones. And then I put out a lot of, like we talked about the giving records. I just did a blog post on that too, so maybe we'll do a link to my blog too. So.
Sheri, we'll put some ones that we recommend out there. I caution everybody to just pick it. It's resources in this area are plentiful. Good resources in this area are less plentiful, and we just want to make sure that you have the right information to help you be successful. And a lot of publishing companies decided this was a good area, and we have some that maybe we wouldn't be necessarily supporting for your churches, and we just want to help you with that. If you have any questions on any resources that you do find, contact us, and we would be glad to help you in that area. So we will put some out there.